Automation could take 250,000 jobs held by Indigenous workers in industries like construction, transportation, and food services. This is according to a new report. And for more on it, we're joined by Tabitha Bull. She's the CEO and president at the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Businesses. Welcome to Your Morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Why are Indigenous workers at a higher risk of losing their jobs to automation?
So based on our survey, we looked at where the highest sectors were for risk of automation, and then looked at the percentage of Indigenous workers in those areas. And then more specifically looked at the skill level and the area and where those Indigenous workers worked. And in most cases, the higher percentage of Indigenous workers than non-Indigenous workers are in those top 5 sectors. And a high proportion of those workers are in what we would call level C or D areas and levels of work, which are really tied to education.
Now, there's no set time frame on when this could happen. So what can businesses do to try and prevent those results?
Yeah, so the CD Howe report, which is one of the reports that we also used as a reference report, really says, it could happen in a decade. It's not going to happen in the next few years. And of course, it's going to depend on businesses looking at the business case for automation. But also, it does give a bit of a silver lining that it gives us an opportunity to prepare better. And the key piece of that is going to be about education. So education of Indigenous youth, for sure, ensuring that we're providing equitable access to education located near communities as well. And then also on the job training and the ability for us and corporations to ensure that we're providing continuing learning on the job training that's going to allow Indigenous workers to be able to pivot to the new positions and new opportunities.
Yeah, education being the key, because as the job market changes, the requirements will change as well. We want to be able to keep as many people employed as possible. Indigenous people in Canada represent 4% of the labour force, and they generate a combined income of $30 billion a year. So what barriers, Tabitha, are Indigenous people facing in a workforce that non-Indigenous people might not?
So we definitely do see, that initial access to education. So while we have seen some gains in Indigenous youth going into post-secondary, and the attainment rate actually when they get to post-secondary is fairly high, we're still about half of a percentage of non-Indigenous youth going into and obtaining a post-secondary education. Then we also do see still, unfortunately, some bias, unconscious or not, within the workforce and the ability for Indigenous people to move up into the higher level sector areas within an organization. There's still definitely barriers there. And then also just, the cultural awareness of corporations and government and places of work, for those places of work to feel safe for Indigenous people.
What recommendations does your council have?
So we're definitely looking that we need to do more research. So this is a high-level report. We need to look more specifically at distinction-based, so First Nation, Inuit, and Métis, and the barriers of those distinctive people. We also need to look at gender, of course. So how is this for Indigenous women versus non-Indigenous women? And we need to start to put towards some recommendations on policy around education. We really need an all-level government solution to education, not just a federal issue.
Tabitha Bull, good to have your insights on this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.